I grew up during the rise of emulating console games on PC, editing graphics in NESticle, and playing around with fan-translated copies of games that hadn't hit the States yet, like Final Fantasy V and Pokemon Silver. It's honestly still wild to me that state-of-the-art consoles from that era, like the PlayStation, can be just as easily emulated today. Even owning much more advanced games on Steam, I still get a thrill booting up something I used to spin on a disc or played in the arcade. But the real thrill I got out of emulation was trying out random weird games I'd never heard of before. I guess some things never change. Most of those games didn't leave much of an impression on me. Usually only a few details if they really stood out, like Zigzag Cat Ostrich Club Mo Oosawagi, or a mediocre Street Fighter clone featuring a martial arts grandma who threw her teeth at you and transformed into her younger self. Unbeknownst to me, that game had a healthy arcade life well into the aughts and was a hell of a lot better than the SNES port I played back then. Today we're taking a journey back to that weirdness with Power Instinct. I'm Eric J. Chucky, and welcome to Violent Profiles, where we discuss obscure fighting games and the rosters that define them. Atlus dropped Power Instinct in 1993 with a sequel that followed in 1994 and the tag team-based Goketsuji Legends in 1995. We're only covering those first three games since I'll be splitting the series up into 3 episodes across several seasons of Violent Profiles, since there are 47 characters to explore in total. Thankfully, because the game is very character-driven, there isn't much backstory outside of the fighters themselves. See, one of the things I like about Power Instinct is that the tournament is diegetic. Every 5 years, the Goketsuji clan holds a contest of martial prowess to see who controls the family fortune and all the power that comes with it. As such, many of the playable characters are related through the Goketsuji bloodline, since that's a prerequisite of eligibility. It's an interesting structure, creates immediate stakes in storytelling, and I don't know.
I just think they're neat.
I'm getting most of my info off the Goketsuji Wikia, so forgive any truthiness and feel free to correct me in the comments. I'm honestly not 100% sure where they got all this information, because citing sources isn't something you have to do on a Wikia. I just couldn't scrounge up a whole lot of independent verification. There are dialogue snippets in-game that help, and the original had character bios that were cut from stateside console ports, unless they were the same as the brief ones in the instruction booklets, which might be what the Wikia has translated. There was also an accompanying manga, though I understand that's of questionable canon. I usually try to source this info myself, but a lot of it is in Japanese, and I don't read Japanese, nor do I trust Google Translate any more than the fans maintaining the Wikia, so we're going to extend a little trust today. Let's go ahead and get Grandma out of the way, and in doing so we'll also talk about her twin sister. Because, believe it or not, they're the main characters of the series. Otane Goketsuji, Tane if you're nasty, had a rough childhood. Apparently, Tane kicked her sister Ume out of the womb first, making her the older of the two. From that day forward, Ume grew to resent everything she saw as representative of her sister. Tane had a sweet, friendly disposition, while Ume preferred uncompromising strength. When the two were only 6, Ume stuffed a sleeping Tane into a box and threw her into the ocean. Miraculously, Tane survived and spent 5 years living with another family under a cloud of amnesia. When her memories returned at age 13, she vowed revenge and returned to Kyoto to confront her sister, but the two's rage was kept at bay by their mother. Tane only stayed 2 years at her family mansion before she could no longer handle her sister's cruelty and what she eventually came to recognize as her mother's indifference. She left again, this time with the intent to train until she surpassed her sister in power. Please understand this woman is 78 years old. She went off to train for 63 years to beat her sister. In that time, Ume got arranged marriage to a fellow named Kanji Kokuin who had nowhere near the patience as Tane and dumped her ass after 2 weeks. At the age of 18, Ume won the Goketsuji tournament, and as of the first game, she has been the leader of the clan ever since. Of course, games have endings and plots between entries. Power Instinct ends with Tane taking control, which both Ume and their mother do not want. Ume literally pulls the box in the ocean gag again with help from her mother, and they throw a new emergency tournament while engaging in some mother-daughter backstabbing for rights to the throne. Tane somehow makes it back to the tournament again and manages to defeat Ume again, but is so exhausted by all this that she's easily surpassed by Kanji. Immediately after seizing the Goketsuji clan, he opens another tournament just for funsies with a cool prize on the line. Both sisters enter for this one, Tane feeling depressed after her losses, and nothing picks a person up like beating ass, and Ume trying to weasel her way back into power. Again. The twins are essentially the same character, Tane playable by default in Power Instinct 1 with Ume being the boss, vice versa in Power Instinct 2, and both available in Legends with slightly different color palettes and moves. They each will throw their dentures at you, project giant yellow effigies of their scowling faces, and are incredibly spry for their age, however, making these sisters unmistakably cut from the same cloth. They also have the power to briefly transform into younger versions of themselves, which is just a fascinating idea that they managed to execute with aplomb. Let's move from 2 very Japanese characters in this very Japanese series to a real American. Keith Wayne. He ain't no Goketsuji. Who needs a surname when you can just have a second first name? Keith is from Chicago. He likes Rocky movies. He drinks raw eggs for breakfast. He smokes cigarettes and he steals beer, gets in fights and pulls pranks. His dad's name is Johnny Wayne. He was in a gang until his dad asked him to stop, and he did, but he's still friends with the gang leader because he's so cool. He loves his dad and his dad loves him. He likes older women because of some unresolved trauma about his absentee mother. He throws lightning on the ground like Terry Bogard. He'll kick you into the sky like Colonel Guile. He's only in this tournament because he felt like it. And also there are hot girls there, and he loves his dad. America! Let's talk about the Chinese native Chinen, or as he's known in these early games, Thin Nen. He's a Buddhist monk who indulges in every vice you can think of, originally sent to the monastery by his mother to turn him into a good son, but that didn't happen. He in fact bailed on the monastery after stealing a bunch of money from the monks to fund his search for power, as in he went from temple to temple, learning as much as he could from each sect of monks, and adding it to his ultimate understanding of vague anime martial arts power. He's kind of like if Street Fighter's M. Bison used hard work and determination to become the psycho-crushing madman he is today. They even have a similar body shape. Except that somehow, despite being an absolute degenerate in practice, he still keeps a very calm Zen attitude. Is he a study in contrast and contradiction? A man lusting for power while keeping the teachings of Buddha in his heart? Or is he just faking it to mess with people while amassing a reputation for violence and indulgence? Chinen throws flaming skulls, and sometimes the whole skeleton, has unique-looking normals that take advantage of his long legs, and my personal favorite, a paralyzing attack that doesn't use freezing ice, but instead binding paper talismans. Not bad for a guy who looks like Krillin's dad. Annie Hamilton is a curious character that I think is kind of emblematic of the Power Instinct design ethos. Her visuals are a little bit boring, despite being inspired by the stylish all-female musical theater group Takarazuka Revue. She's a spoiled, wealthy native of London, but despite being bossy and domineering, she's very compassionate, which is a fun twist. Usually characters, especially in fighting games, are kind of one note, and for her to have this nuance makes her intriguing. Annie loves animals and has 6 dogs, 4 cats, 3 horses, and a tortoise named Kensington. She first discovered her powers as a child during her social dance lessons, which could quite possibly be a real thing. I don't know. I'm a poor. Annie was paired with one of the more nervous boys in the group who kept messing up, eventually stepping on her dress, tearing it, and knocking her down. Annie was so furious, glowing balls of energy manifested and destroyed the classroom. There were no casualties, but despite Annie's shame, she couldn't bring herself to apologize. She simply never returned to the class. Mood. This stubbornness also shows up with her Rainbow Barrier move, only used in the first Power Instinct because she saw Tane pull off something similar and had to rework the whole thing to retain its uniqueness. An odd thing to fixate on since the rest of her moves are so generic, but it's her aesthetic, I'm not gonna harsh it. Her moves visuals could be pretty cool, like when she shoots golden swans at people, and her Photon Schnauzer special adds more power to punches and fireball moves, but otherwise she's not the most unique fighter. Maybe that's a case if Seinfeld is unfunny, but here I am watching Seinfeld in 2023, and I've heard this joke enough times now that it's not clever anymore.
Hey, so what's the deal with brunch? I mean, if it's a combination of breakfast and lunch, how come there's no lupper? Or no linner?
After failing to become the head of the Goketsuji clan in the tournament from the first Power Instinct, Annie was walking Kensington in the park when she came across a fellow tortoise fancier walking his own noble beast. She began visiting the park more frequently, coyly trying to introduce herself to the man, and eventually they had their meet cute. They hit it off, and Annie finally earned the courage to ask him to give her his tortoise. The man refused, Annie's heart was broken, and that's the end of her story for now. One of these days, I'm going to be kidding, and you're going to believe it and look really silly when you tell all your friends what you learned from me. But today's not that day. Another deceptively bland-looking fighter, Reiji Oyama, the hot-blooded karate man from Yokohama, Japan, is one part Ryu from Street Fighter and one part Hoshi Hyuma from the 1960s baseball manga/anime Star of the Giants. He's sort of a parody of the badass wandering martial artist in the same way Keith Wayne is a parody of badass American street toughs. He has the Hadouken, the Shoryuken, and even does Ryu's throw and sweep, but there are differences, including Reiji possessing Chun-Li's lightning kick. Reiji loves karate and has become a master of every karate tournament he stepped into, inspiring him to join the no-holds-barred 16th Goketsuji tourney. When he fails to win, it really affects him. He steps up his game, becomes a 6th Dan black belt, and then begins a dramatic training regimen. See, Reiji is a construction worker when he's not destroying ankles, and one day when his quick reactions save a coworker from a falling spanner, he declares they should, at any moment, without warning, attack him to keep him on his toes. As time goes on, fewer and fewer of his friends show up to attack him, and eventually he believes he's driven everyone away, until they all jump him while he's sleeping in the night. Reiji is overjoyed and feels he's finally ready for the next tournament. Speaking of parodies, how do you justify a fully costumed ninja in a then-modern 1993 fighting game? Easy. Give him some trauma-induced fear of social interactions. Saizo Hattori was shy enough as a kid, but the night before a family reunion, a cousin scribbled an obscene word on his face. And when young Saizo emerged to greet his loved ones, they all pointed and laughed at him.
They're all gonna laugh at you!
Also, his parents were out of town on business and supposed to show up for the reunion, but never did. I'm not sure if they died or just bailed on him, but it was all too much for Saizo and he withdrew even more inside himself. He doesn't show his face anymore, often speaks in a language he made up, though the Goketsuji family and some animals can inherently understand it, and in general avoids others. Despite this, for some reason, he gets a job as a costume mascot at a theme park, which makes sense when you think, hey, I can work here and never show any ounce of my body to another human being, but also you're constantly around people who really want to hang out with you. This was made even worse when he discovered the park's group changing rooms. In a panic, Saizo tried to throw a smoke bomb and escape the awkwardness, but accidentally threw down a load of fire bombs instead and destroyed the park. This backstory is delightfully mundane for someone who is a literal smoke bomb throwing, wave dashing, super fast ninja. With his reach and speed, he's one of the most fun characters to play, and the classic ninja look is absolutely a part of it. Likely for that reason, many of his endings involve him beginning to get over his fears, only to meet some stimulus that restores the status quo. Gotta keep that iconic mask in the sequels, after all. I want to hang out with White Buffalo. He's a stereotypical Native American, inspired somewhat by the 1962 Chuck Connors vehicle Geronimo. Down-to-earth, responsible, and capable. He's reticent but not stoic. In fact, he's quite friendly and easygoing. He spends his time on the reservation minding livestock, assisting the chief, and managing saleable goods, but his true passion is collecting shiny knickknacks, especially metallic items, jewelry, and animal figures. I can really relate to this guy. I do my best to help others. I'm quiet but playful. I love animals and silly trinkets. Plus, I too can drop flaming elbows and shoot yellow energy from my hands. I also love a character with good reach, and White Buffalo's long legs give him plenty. Despite being such an important member of the Amii tribe and future chief, White Buffalo was actually a descendant of the Goketsuji clan, and for that reason he was invited to the tournament. Still, this he uses to support the Amii, donating the money earned from his fight broadcasts to his people. The last member of the original Power Instinct roster is the Italian-born Angela Belti, meant to parody the strongman fighting game character trope by making it a woman?
Where do you get off having tits?
To sell this joke, they initially gave her a male voice, but they played her a bit more seriously after the first game, thankfully. Angela is a character who really does deserve respect. She's a professional animal trainer for the circus, hence the whip, and in particular has developed a bond with a pair of lions named Poochie and Spike. She was apparently inspired by the professional wrestler Reggie Bennett, who... Oh my.
I want to give it all to you.
During a Russian tour, Angela caught the eye of a Japanese wrestler, and who could blame him, who was also on tour, and the two became a couple who seemed deeply in love. This is, perhaps, why so many of her moves are borrowed from pro wrestling techniques. The circus moved on, and Angela moved on with them, but when she finally had occasion to return to her beau, he was no longer there. Assuming he went home to Japan, she pursued him, only to find out from one of his friends that he didn't want to see her anymore because he was jealous of her incredible physique. And who could blame him? Me, I could blame him. You find a woman like that, you keep her. On to Power Instinct 2, which added 5 new characters. We briefly mentioned Kanji Kokuin before as part of their Goketsuji twins story. A martial arts practitioner from a young age, Kanji was determined to become the strongest man in Japan, and he did. The end. Okay, not quite, but that's about the long and short of it. His adventures in heroism and feats of strength drew the ear of Tane and Ume's mother, who arranged a marriage with the daughter that hadn't been tossed into the ocean. Kanji couldn't stand Ume and they divorced, but as he's a descendant of the Goketsuji clan, it earns him the right to compete in the emergency tournament of Power Instinct 2 and win the damn thing. You may be wondering how Kanji managed this, aside from wit, guile, and taking advantage of an exhausted Tane. That would be with loincloth whips, big farts, and turning into his true form, a frail old man. Devastating. Kanji also has a great-grandnephew in Kintaro Kokuin, or Kinta for short. I hate this character. Not only is he a child, and I am classically not a fan of children, but he's an obnoxious little brat who thinks he's a sexy, sculpted superhero. I know the trope, especially in anime, the overconfident kid who is an absolute bastard to adults, and when he starts to get his comeuppance, resorts to crocodile tears to get out of trouble. And all that's plenty of reason to hate him, but the most annoying part is, to better show off his quote-unquote physique, he only wears a giant bib, which means during certain animations his little wing-wang is exposed. I don't have a moral objection to this, because it's obviously played for laughs and not anything creepy, but it's in poor taste. Sure, it was the 90s, and characteristic of Japanese humor. Hell, the Simpsons movie pulled a similar gag in 2007. But I don't want to see it, and I'm not putting it on my YouTube channel, so I have to carefully choose footage and edit around the damn thing. I can find things I like about him though, particularly his moveset. He's got some really unique normals, conjures a giant koi to ride, vomits up bears at people, and summons his giant bear friend Caesar to obliterate the enemy health bar in one hit. Plus, transforming into a Sentai-inspired avatar of his dead dog is pretty creative, but we'll get to that in a bit. Inspired by Lady Miyako from the film Akira, Oshima Gokuetsuji is the mother of Ume and Tane, whose name I've been avoiding this whole time because it's a lot of proper nouns to dump on your head at the beginning of a video. A shrine maiden and martial artist, she showed early promise as a magic tournament fighter person. While visiting a friend's antique shop, she spilled water on a magic map and it revealed the location of many untold treasures which she accumulated to help solidify her family's riches and build their reputation. It was she who declared power over the clan should be contested in a tournament every 5 years, even though when Ume eventually beat her for the title, it brought her great shame. Now she's back, flinging her hair around like Sindel, or rather the other way around since Sindel debuted in 1995's Mortal Kombat 3, and swinging her tiny little old lady fists like my grandma at a pro wrestling event. The Wikia also describes her as clairvoyant, which, given the events of the game, I do not think I believe. Oshima only appears playable in Power Instinct 2 and Legends, a trait she shares with Sahad, Asran, Ryuto. He's a stoic Lebanese noble, which is a cultural identity you don't see in fiction a lot. I appreciate that. He's also a true Renaissance man, raised to be a master of art, athleticism, and even magic. Much like Keith Wayne, Sahad has 3 first names. I'm going to call him Sahad, the wiki calls him Ryuto, if you want to call him Asran, that'll even us all out. His reserved nature was galvanized when his 3 older sisters began to bully him, not unlike Cinderella's stepsisters. When this torment continued at school, he discovered the only way to control his phenomenal magic power was to rein in his emotions and remain calm. A distant relative of the Goketsuji clan, Sahad caught fight footage of the first Power Instincts tournament on TV, which feels like such a legitimate, realistic way to find out about the tourney instead of a mysterious invite or supernatural vision. I love it. And participated in the emergency tourney to prove himself to his sisters and explore his heritage. When Kanji organized his own grand prize tournament, Sahad only entered to get closer to Angela, and who can blame him?
Yeah, right on.
I wanted to like Sahad more, but his moves suffer from Power Instinct's greatest flaw, being kind of difficult to pull off. He throws a scimitar around,
Curved. Swords.
and can even summon a genie to do a little dance that beats the shit out of you. But his normals are less than impressive, and much like Oshima, I can see why he never made it into future games. Sahad was actually invited to the Matra Melee tournament, a game we're not covering today, but he missed his flight, forgot some important luggage at home, really wasn't interested, and just didn't feel like putting in the effort. I think I love the characters of Power Instinct. You, not you. The final character added in Power Instinct 2 was Kurara Hananokoji. Here's a fun fact, she was voiced by Kotono Mitsuishi, the voice of Sailor Moon. Fitting, as she was inspired by that character and the protagonist of Creamy Mommy, which isn't what it sounds like. It's an anime about a 10-year-old girl who gains the power to transform into a 16-year-old girl, and you know what? I don't need to know. Nobody needs to know.
In your sleep all is forgotten.
Clara, as she eventually came to be known, swings her magic wand around, beats things with a giant hammer space mallet, and turns you into a duck. She can also change into a roller skate wearing super-powered form, which treads uncomfortably into Creamy Mommy territory and is a separate character in Legends called Super Clara. I actually really like Super Clara. She's got spunk. I love the roller skates, being a big fan of the original Kitty Pryde outfit, and she's got very natural feeling moves. Plus, she shoots cool electricity projectiles. But then there's that butt hanging out, and that butt hasn't seen enough years to pass in front of my eyes. Regular Clara's backstory reads largely like a dating profile, which I am uncomfortable reading because she is 13. Suffice it to say, she's a pretty normal Japanese teen, albeit a bit self-absorbed. Her favorite animals are pigs and ducks, hence all the pigs and ducks. She's at that age where she's interested in boys, and she's hoping to be accepted into Tokyo University. Or, you know, become the leader of the Goketsuji clan, go to Egypt, fall in love, travel the world, and eat red bean pancakes in front of the Parthenon. Clara proved so popular, she ended up starring in her own spin-off called Purikura Daisakusen and featured as a guest fighter in Heaven's Gate. No, not that one. No, not that one. There we go. Hang on, that game isn't on my to-do list. I swear, if that's another entry in the Goketsuji series, I have to figure out how to wedge it. Oh, no, it's its own game. Score. We'll have to take a look at that sometime. Speaking of characters that can turn into weird, uncomfortable shit, Poochie. This is actually a transformation of Kintaro's that exists as its own character in a few games. See, before the tournament in Power Instinct 2, Kintaro's father got him a dog in hopes of helping him become less of a terrible naked shitlord. That didn't work, but the kid loved the dog. Unfortunately, despite going into a school for problem children and being a problem child himself, Kintaro thought it was a great idea to leave Poochie at the school alone for an extended period of time, and the other kids beat him to death. The dog's dying words to his beloved boy were waf wah, nuan nuan, which is dog for, hey, I'm not gonna die. I'm gonna turn into the most horrifyingly slutty fursuiter Kmart can offer and protect you from evil. Also, you can turn into me. Or we trade places or something. See, I'm not really you, but I can replace you in a fight. You know what? Just don't think about it too hard. Poochie's moves are fluid, feel impactful, and are definitely what I would expect from this character. He digs up bones at you, slaps you with his extendo ears, his fursuit holds you down while he clubs your ass, and in spite of it all, I kinda love him. I mean, this is terrible. He just looks so off-putting, but there's something about him that's got charm. He's exactly the kind of superhero protector a kid whose dog died tragically would think up, and then Sinbad's non-existent rapping genie granted him a wish to make the superhero real, and now we're stuck with this. I don't hate it. Still better than Kintaro himself. I also don't hate that we can play as a Kuroko in Legends. That's the little ninja guys in the background of the other games. They're the extremely loyal personal assistants of the Goketsuji family, somewhere between a major domo and an Oompa Loompa. They don't really talk, they follow orders, and they all run around doing tasks most of the time. Kenji demanded one be present to act as a partner for fighters who couldn't otherwise come up with one, since the Legends tournament is sort of a tag team affair. You can't play them as the leaders, so they have no ending and don't even possess much of a personality, but I love how they fight. They use fans, extendo boxing gloves, and a bunch of other knickknacks, and they are fast. Their super involves them shooting another Kuroko out of a cannon at the enemy. That's just great. Interestingly, in the US version of Legends, he's referred to as Ninja Boy and has this official art instead of, this. Finally, we have the boss of Power Instinct Legends, Chuck. He was hired by Kanji to serve as the last challenge to win his Just for Fun tournament. He has no relation to the clan, is only playable via cheat codes, and only makes an appearance in Legends, so unlike everyone else in the cast, there's not a lot of info on him. He's a Brazilian Taekwondo fighter based on sports instructor Chuck Wilson and is described as narcissistic and overconfident. It's a shame this is his only outing because I love his flipping hurricane kick, his laser fireballs, and most of his normals. His big codpiece though? Yeah, I love that too. Your fave could never. Unless your fave is Voldo from Soul Calibur, then yeah, that's like his whole deal. And that's it. That's all I'm contractually obligated to say about Power Instinct until at least next season. The real trip about this game is, and I don't know if you can tell this from the footage, but it's good? It manages to stand out from Street Fighter while being cut from the same cloth, and plays around with concepts that weren't solidified yet, like tag team fighting and the super meter. I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see a revival at some point in the future. Atlus is obviously still making games, and they even make reference to this series in Persona 5 Royal. I love how the characters are this delightful mix of borderline offensive 90s humor and suspiciously on brand for the modern world. This is a game that features strong, confident women, underdressed himbos, and extremely relatable character motivations and reactions. And half this roster reads as some kind of neurodivergent or another. Like, most of them would see one of those, either these living with autism posts need to stop sounding so relatable or I need to go to therapy memes and have the reaction of, oh snap. If I have to level a criticism, I suppose it's that the in-game endings aren't great, hence why I haven't really mentioned anything about them. They're one-note jokes that have nothing to do with the overall story. But then, that's the tone for these games. It's hard to be critical of something that's so obviously getting the reaction it's looking for. I don't know, maybe the series falls off in the future, but for now, I'm rooting for this one. Next time on Violent Profiles, we'll look at a game that will pave the way for a future episode, and also a past one, appropriate given the name and theme. Hey, if you liked this video, could you hit the like button and tell me what you liked about it in the comments section? This not only feeds my fragile ego, but it also tells YouTube to promote the show, and the only way I get pancakes is if this show does well. Spam low kick on that subscribe button if you haven't already, and support us on Patreon at the $5 tier to get new episodes a month early. Shout out to all the names currently on screen for doing exactly that. Until next time, white out.